And hello, welcome to the AWS Twitch channel. My name is John Rotenstein and I'm a developer advocate at AWS. And in my spare time, I like answering questions on Stack Overflow. So I thought, hey, why not do that online with folks like yourselves, where we can answer some Stack Overflow questions together. Shout out to, hey, Emily, good to see you on here. Don't often have you on this show. So say hi in the chat. We're a friendly bunch for this sort of thing. Like to do a bit of community interaction as we get going. So let me know. Brads, who is always online, fantastic to see you there. Hirsch, haven't seen your name on here before. Or where are you calling in from? I feel like a telephone disc jockey. Noma Bear, hello, haven't seen you around either. Where are you living in the world? The most exotic location I've had in the past was, I think, Bermuda. We popped into some lovely areas there. Jenny Rain, I think I've seen you on before. Good to have you here. San Francisco, excellent. I'll tell you my guilty pleasure. I recently started playing Watch Dogs 2, which is a Ubisoft game set in San Francisco, and it's so realistic that I've been to these baseball stadium. I went to the Airbnb nearby where I once stayed, down at Fisherman's Wharf. It's amazing. It's almost like being in San Francisco, so I quite enjoy that game. Oh, I'm streaming from Sydney, Australia, where it is currently 11 AM tomorrow. For many of you folks, it's Thursday here, and it's warming up. It's spring. It's becoming a nice weather over here. Portland, fantastic. I love all of the food trucks in Portland. You can see where my interests lie, can't you? So I greatly enjoy my visit. G'day, Fersh. You've picked up the lingo. We should talk more Strine later on, and I'll teach you some more Australian. So, any other girls out there? Ghibli, you might know, is my co-host on CQ, the Certification Quiz Show. I should give a shout out for Certification Quiz Show. If you ever watch one day earlier than this show, it's on YouTube. I'll give you a playlist where we get to do certification questions online, and we're actually planning some fun things to do during reInvent. Some of you may be aware that reInvent this year has been changed slightly. Where's the webpage for it? Rather than being a like 4-day thing in Las Vegas, it's now a 3-week virtual conference. It doesn't mean it'll be solid 3 weeks, but it does mean that we'll have some releases every day, some keynotes, and MJ and I will be involved in creating some of those fun things to do during that 3-week period. Hey, Mr. Bob, good to have you along. Okay, whoa, that's a psychedelic pattern going on there. So, for those of you who just joined, my name is John. I'm a developer advocate with AWS in Sydney, Australia, and I like answering Stack Overflow questions. So I had a peek this morning of all the things. I love it. All the questions mostly happen in the US, and so when I wake up in the morning, there's lots of questions there for me to answer rather than having to dribble throughout the day. So I always enjoy my mornings and coming in to get questions. Throughout the show, I'll also give a chance of showing you how Stack Overflow works and giving you a few tips how you might do it. Wildfire smoke back in Seattle. That's not good. We have had bushfire seasons in Australia before where our sky turned orange, and that was always a strange experience. Are they the bushfires from California that have come up to Seattle, as opposed to protesters burning things locally? Oops, don't say that. Okay, so I've marked a few things this morning. In fact, somebody is coming back here. I have no idea what that question's about. I have bookmarked a few questions this morning that are worth looking at on Stack Overflow. The whole West Coast is burning. Not good. Say, Proxy, good to have you on. I'll try and take your mind off such things. Let's talk about AWS. See if we can answer some questions here. We'll give a little ding every time we can answer a question. I saw this one. Include only gzip extensions files from S3 bucket. I want to process / download gzip files from an S3 bucket. There are more than 10,000 files, so I'm using this code, which seems to be Python, getting a list of all objects and printing the name of the object. This lists text files which I want to avoid. How can I do that? So, oh, no answers. So I often see this. People want to do some very complex processing on S3, and there are various filter operations. If I go to the Boto 3 documentation, Boto 3 is the AWS SDK for Python. It is named after a type of, I can't get it, Boto 3 name originate. The dolphin or a whale, or it's the name, Portuguese name given to dolphins native to the Amazon River. There we are. So that's why Boto is called Boto. So let's dive into it. Sorry about that. What are they doing in the code here? They're saying, get me all objects. So if we look in the documentations for objects.all, it returns all objects. But what you can do instead of returning all objects, I know you can filter. Scrolly. Yeah, we have the ability to filter objects that come back from the query. However, I don't think this will work because you can filter by a prefix, which means you can filter by a prefix, but I don't think you can filter by a suffix. So you can't say what file types to include. So how to list objects by extension from API. I love it when people link to other questions, because sometimes you can close a question as duplicate. Often people ask the same question, and if you have enough reputation on Stack Overflow, you can just come in and say mark it as a duplicate, point it to the duplicate question, and poof, question is automatically closed. It looks like somebody is here saying, I don't think it's possible. Let's give them an answer. Way to filter. What's the command in Python? I think it's a .ends with. Now, is there any other advice we can give here? 10,000 files on S3. That's going to be really, really slow with objects.all. It'll take 10 executions of 1,000. Might be slow. Leave it at that. First question often going, it's not a great answer, but oh, look, they misspelled bucket. My budget. Let's go in there. The other nice thing you can do if you have enough reputation on Stack Overflow is you can improve the quality of questions being asked, such as fixing typos. And Mr. Bob, it's not that many. If it were millions, I'd recommend getting an inventory report. Exactly what I was thinking. Amazon S3 inventory is pretty neat. Not what I wanted. S3 inventory. There it is. Amazon S3 inventory is a feature of Amazon S3 that can give you a daily or weekly CSV file or OIC or Parquet files, which are columnar based files, really good for Amazon Athena. A daily or weekly dump of a list of all the objects in your bucket, and it includes some of the metadata about the bucket, but not all the metadata. We've previously looked at, and it doesn't include tags or the additional metadata on there, but it does tell you about the name of the bucket, the name of the object, the size. Replication, is it encrypted, etc. So that's a great way to get a listing of the objects out of there. You know, a lot of people say the Fersh's comment about three-way was almost blocked as a sexual comment, which it is not. Apparently Twitch doesn't understand terminology of AWS. A lot of people say, why doesn't S3 do this? It's a really obvious feature. Can't you do? S3 is the simple storage service. It's not designed to do absolutely everything. They've been doing a lot on there. Things like S3 Select and Lifecycle Rules is doing a lot on there. But if you just think of it as a really, really big disk, and disks are typically not that smart, that's what S3 is. And all the other functionality can be built on top of it. Can S3 inventory be used in unison with the Redshift copy command? Oh, that's really interesting. So Redshift has a concept called a manifest file. However, it is not the same format, or is it? Let's have a look. I don't think it's the same format. Oh, okay. I'll take this back. With the Redshift copy command now. So the output of S3 inventory can be in an excellent format to use with Amazon Redshift Spectrum, which is the same as Athena, so it can read the contents of those files. However, the Redshift copy command has an option called a manifest file, which means you can, rather than just saying copy everything in this directory, you can say, here is a list of objects that I want you to copy into Redshift. But the format of the manifest file is not compatible with the format of S3 inventory. But, and if you want to use S3 inventory, you could just use the copy command to point to a bucket. So they're not quite compatible, but reading the results of it very much would be. Lots of chatter. I like to see lots of chatter coming on in here. How is the user loading the files? Well, if you're talking about this particular thing, they haven't said what processing they're doing with the files. So actually we can ask them what type of processing they've got going on here. Sizing my windows. What type of... So you're quite right. They might not need to download to process these files if they're in a certain format and it's compatible with things like Athena. So they might not need to do that. Sort file types into different buckets. Yes, if they improve their input content, then that will often work a lot better. What's the user doing? Oh, wow. Dream Warfare. Nice to have you on the show. Haven't seen you on before. It says, guess I'll keep my Kinesis stream since it can't be inventoried by S3 directly. Nice way with Kinesis is automatic Redshift ingestion. Yeah, if you're using Redshift Firehose, sorry, Amazon Kinesis Firehose can send directly into Redshift. Actually, it's not really directly. It actually batches the files into S3 and then runs the copy command onto it. But it can do it automatic on a regular basis. So really great way to get frequent data going into Amazon Redshift. Next question I had lined up. Oh, how can I turn on off my EC2 scheduler with Lambda DynamoDB twice a day? I want to set a schedule for my EC2 instance to turn on twice a day at 2 specific times and turn off after 30 minutes. Oh, that's interesting. I created one scheduler and I set up 2 schedules. When I add the keys, I wonder if they're using... So AWS has published a CloudFormation template that can deploy a scheduler, and it's called this thing, the AWS EC2 scheduler, which is very capable, but I also find it very, very complex. Link to it, then it's been replaced by the instance scheduler. And it looks like it uses DynamoDB, Lambda, CloudWatch, EC2, RDS. It's a bit over-featured. So I tried to come up with, long-time viewers of my show will remember that I came up with what I called a simple EC2 stopinator. And this blog post, I'll put it in the chat. Is my answer to how to make a stopinator. It's very simple. It's just a Lambda function and the permissions you need to run the Lambda function. And I created 2 types. It's in GitHub. One type is to stop instances at a certain time, and you can just add a tag to say please stop, and you set the Lambda function to run, say 7 o'clock at night. So once a day, 7 o'clock at night, it just looks at instances that you should turn off. Very, very simple. It's what I use to turn things off at night that I've been demonstrating during the day. I then made a slightly better one called Type 2 Stopinator, which can stop, terminate, or notify instances after a given duration. So you can say, please stop an instance after it has been running for 30 minutes, or terminate after. So that's got a little bit of the features they wanted. So it won't start the instance. If their only issue is tag names, why don't they have schedule? Yeah, it depends on the scheduler they're using. So I'm going to push for my own one for a moment. Copy a link. I have a little tool here that copies Markdown, so I can just paste it directly into the chat. So I don't like how Dev2 puts that on. If they use auto scaling, they could change the size, scale in and scale out. Yeah, I think they specifically want to start and stop things at a particular day, really, don't they? Simple. Specify a duration. Now, am I answering the question, or am I just pushing my own recommendation here? By the way, feel free to add your comments on there about auto scaling and that sort of thing. I should put a link here in chat. Always happy for other people to put different ideas on these questions. I'd like to use Lambda Dynamo. Now, one thing you can do in CloudWatch events, I don't know if you've seen this. So Amazon CloudWatch started as a nice, simple metric system. What's my CPU utilization? What's the size of my S3 buckets? Over time, they've added so many features in here, it's hard to track. Container insights, synthetics, I don't know what they are. Contributor insights. No idea what those things are. I'm going to go for CloudWatch events, and CloudWatch events has. Did I create that event? Oh, I don't want that event. Something that I've left over from somewhere. Bye-bye to that event. So I can come in here and create a rule based on a schedule, and based on a particular cron expression, I can come in and say EC2 stop or terminate. Oh, I can't start an instance. Okay, so you can only use a CloudWatch event to reboot, stop, or start an instance. So much for what I was going to suggest to them. Really neat CloudWatch events. What else can you do in here? You can trigger Lambda functions, which means you can do pretty much anything. Send messages to SNS, SQS, trigger SSM run commands. The more I play with SSM, the more I love it. I'm really starting to enjoy some of the capabilities that it offers. Ooh, Firehose delivery stream. Send something to that. Very good. I will just, we've been a bit of time into the show. I shall distract you with something that I've been looking at recently. And last week we introduced a new service called AWS Cost Anomaly Detection. And this is really interesting because it looks at your spend on AWS and warns you if the spend seems to be outside a normality. So AWS and Amazon as a whole does a lot with machine learning. And so it looks like they've applied machine learning to this, and you can now track if your cost is going a little bit weird. So let's actually have a play with that. I found it quite interesting. It's in a new category here called cost management. If you go to the Cost Explorer, it's the same thing. It's fancy new service options we've got. So here is the normal Cost Explorer where I can see what my expenditure is. And I can go down and Anomaly Detection. So you've got to turn it on. I turned mine on the other day, but I'll show you how it works. You come in and you say, I would like to create a monitor, please. And you can do it for your account, for other accounts, or by category or by tags, it seems. You tell it what the anomaly is. So if you're just starting out, if it's your own account or something, you can put in a low number, $50, $20, whatever. Do you want it to alert you daily, weekly, or whenever things happen? Give it a SNS topic, which is our simple notification service where a message will be sent and you can then subscribe by email or SMS. And you can then create the monitor. It looks like you can also apply it by cost tag, by cost category. Isn't doing much for me. Maybe I don't have any set up. And tags that are on your resources. And we'll then come up and show you some things. There's nothing there with pretty graphs. Maybe they have some pretty graphs over here. Dream Warfare, will this integrate with US? The quota service? Graphs. Oh, are you referring to QuickSight? Will it tie into QuickSight? Does the Cost Explorer tie into QuickSight? I'm not too sure. Where's the pretty graphs? Give me the pretty graphs. Look for it in the documentation. I want pretty charts. Oh well, it doesn't have any pretty charts. It just sends notifications. So set it up and I will wait till I get notified about what my unusual expenditure is. And what's interesting is it would have been very handy for me if I hop into Cost Explorer and I go here and go back 12 months. And I'll show you the expenditure on my account here. You'll see my expenditure is typically quite low. A couple of exceptions to this here on the right. This is where I was using our Amazon workspaces to host some online events, and I was using some rather expensive pay by the hour workspaces boxes, so they were quite high. But what I didn't know about was back here, and I think I'll go a little bit more. And whoa, no, I don't want the last. I don't want the last. I'll go for 1 year. This whole thing is got forecasting in there. Fantastic. I'm totally confused what I'm doing now. Go back to here. You can almost see it down here. So I did a hands-on lab. I helped create test a hands-on lab where I had Amazon SageMaker running. And I forgot that it was running. I left it running, and here's a charge in April that cost me $170 just to keep it running. Now, it's an internal account. I didn't have to pay it myself, not too bad. But it was only by looking at my billing account one day that I discovered I had it running for a couple of months, and I turned it off after that. So I'm really looking forward to the anomaly detection telling me that my spend has gone outside a certain amount. So no, it looks like it. Anomaly detection, to answer Dream Warfare, will not go into QuickSight. It's just a notification capability. But the question is, does the AWS Cost Explorer integrate with QuickSight? And somebody's saying, how do I ingest the cost and usage report into QuickSight? And it looks like you can bring it in because the cost and usage report saves data out to your S3 bucket. So that looks like it might be an answer to using QuickSight to query your billing data. Interesting. Yeah, thanks, Brad. Yeah, just because I ran up a big bill. Yeah, the biggest request we have from customers is how do I monitor my costs? And it's a pay-as-you-go system. And so it's difficult. Like you can save a lot of money by not having to buy big boxes, but when you use it, you pay for it. So whatever we can do to help our customers monitor their costs and be aware that charges are higher than usual. Yes, you can set billing alarms, and so you can say when EC2 costs me more than $30 in a week, please notify me. But anomaly detection will be great because it'll look at your traditional usage over time and warn you when it goes a little bit higher. We should sell a zero cost only dev account. Yeah, many of you will know about the AWS free tier, which offers certain AWS services either for the first 12 months of your account, or some of them are every month. And it lets you play around with, you can run a EC2 micro instance, you can have storage in S3, you can have an RDS database. So it's for experimenting, playing around. I always tell people don't expect the free tier to support production level accounts. But a lot of people come online and they say, oh dear, I'm about to exceed my usage. And hey, there's 5 gigs of usage in S3, comes out to about, calculate one time, 13 cents of benefit you get out of S3 every month. So it's not like the free tier is a huge amount of data that you're getting out of your services. So it would be interesting to have a service where we can say, hey, this account is locked down to only using free stuff, just so you know that you're not going to violate it. Except EC2, you'd effectively get no compute. You could make a network, but not run anything compute in it, or maybe prepaid or something like that. T4G is now part of the free tier. Really? Going to the, I don't think T4G is part of the free tier, but I think there is a special deal on it at the moment where you can get it for a month. Try them for free. Free trial. Try your T4G micro size until December 31st. So the T4G is our latest generation T family. The T series is burstable compute. So you get a certain powered machine. You can occasionally burst higher than it, and that's okay. You also get a certain proportion of burst capability. And if you use it all up, then your CPU is limited. I should mention, be very careful with the T family machines. If you ever set an auto scaling alarm on a T family instance, the CPU might be limited, so you might not be able to go above 30% when you've used up all the credits. And that therefore can't trigger a scaling alarm to say, hey, I need more compute in my auto scaling group. So don't use the T family in an auto scaling group. Although it does have a feature where you can say, give me unlimited burst, and we'll charge you if you use too much of that. So a great machine for bursty workloads or for running your command lines and things. And the T4G especially is using the Graviton processor, which is the new chipset from Amazon. We made our own chipset, and it is therefore more powerful and lower cost than a normal x86 chipset. But be aware, it doesn't run all software unless you can recompile it or it's available for the ARM processor. And we played with that a few weeks back. T3 is pretty recent. The T4 is even more recent, but it is only available in the Graviton version, at least at the moment. So maybe you should. Yeah, I've got some friends who they every month they try a new streaming service. So you might use Netflix one time. In Australia, we've got a service called Stan. Then you've got Disney. And each month they try a different service because you can't watch all of these streaming services all at once, or Amazon Prime. And so if you concentrate on one streaming service per month, you sort of watch the things specifically on that. And what they've found is they can almost get a free trial from each of them once they rotate through them and do that. So I wonder if you can do the same thing here. Just look out for the new services that come out on AWS. Look for the free offers and try and run your service that way. But frankly, not that expensive. what is a T4G? Priced at T4G. It's a whole 0.42 cents an hour. 0.42 cents an hour is that 0.42. It means in a day it is 10 cents. So not like you're saving a lot of money. Okay. Another one I had here. I'm finding it difficult to query in Athena. Below values are stored in 2 different columns in an Athena table. So for those of you not familiar with Athena, Athena is a really interesting service based on Presto behind the scenes. Presto, which used to be a Facebook service. Basically, Facebook said, hey, we would really like to query across a whole lot of data that is just stored on disk rather than loading into a database. How can we do that? Things like Hadoop work fairly well, but they're quite slow. And they came out with Presto that is just amazing, and it can read data on local disk or on S3 in our case, really, really fast. Could be an animated demo, but they're not doing it anymore. Dream Welfare, the data transfer fees for network I/O from EC2 to the public. I had a few game servers running for a hobby, and the data transfer fees were 10 times the cost of the EC2 instance. Yes, be careful. There was a question I actually answered online. Let's see if I can find it. Video stream. Yes, here it is. It's been since closed. This person was saying, I need help in calculating the cost of video storage and streaming for the cheapest option available for educational videos in India. What's the cheapest way to do it? So I sensibly said, do it on YouTube. It's free. In which case they came up and said, meant to be used on subscription. So always put the details in your Stack Overflow question. And I did indeed point out that data transfer would be their largest cost. On a similar topic, AWS IVS, you may be familiar with. This is our new Twitch-like service. It's like a white label Twitch, where you can run your own streaming video on AWS. So if you're not happy with Twitch, you can start up a competitor and use us to compete against Twitch. And the interesting thing about the pricing, there's 2 components for pricing. One is sending your data to the interactive video service, and that's either 20 cents for standard or $2 for high def, for full HD 1080p. That's a low cost. The real cost is you have to pay for the data transfer for each of your viewers viewing the data. And in America, that can be 3 cents per hour. That's not too bad, actually. Regional cost per hour for each viewer. So 3 cents an hour. If it's HD or full HD, it's 15 cents an hour. But that's per viewer. So if you have 100 viewers and they're watching an hour of content, that can cost you sizable amount of money. 100 people would be $15 for an hour of content if 100 people watched you. So data transfer can be high. Yeah, Australia's really bad. There was a great article that Cloudflare made. Australia cost. They blogged about the cost of network bandwidth around the world. The relative cost of bandwidth around the world. There's a newer one then. This is 2014. But they had a very interesting chart showing how costs and peering. If they can peer with large internet providers, then their costs are very, very low. What they found is that in Australia, they couldn't do a lot of peering, and the local telcos were charging a lot of money for internet bandwidth. So Australia is quite expensive, but we live in a lovely country. So where was I? Here's Amazon Athena. So Athena allows you to query data stored in S3 just by using SQL-like commands. And it's really good. It works on CSV files, Parquet files, ORC. The files can be compressed. and you're only charged on the amount of data that is read from disk. So 3 things you do to improve your performance and lower your costs. One is you compress your data, because compressed data, you've got to read less from disk to get the same amount. You can partition your data, put in separate subdirectories, and if your where statement uses those partitions, then it doesn't have to look at every file, so it can skip over files, and therefore it's faster. And you can use columnar file formats like Parquet and ORC, which are more intelligent, a bit like Redshift. They can jump specifically to the data within the file that you want to pull out to get specific columns. Sweden's expensive, is it? Sweden internet? Everything's more expensive in Sweden. Okay, so this person was saying they have some data in Athena. It looks like it is JSON format. And Athena does support JSON format. There's these extract JSON commands and things. Things looking at it, this one is a list of dictionaries. This one looks a bit weird though. This format, what's this format? You've got something equals something. It's not quite JSON. Anyone recognize that format? Maybe it's in Swedish. I think the question needs clarification. Indeed. Let's ask them what that format is, and that will probably solve the problem. It is not in JSON is the problem. I wouldn't be surprised if they've scraped this. What does it look like? It's looking like it's output from some AWS commands. No idea. But thank you for giving me the opportunity to talk about Athena. Oh, it's a new relic event. Okay, so let's see if we can yeah, because it's got this new relic transaction header. It might be a log file from something. I do not know. Next question. What AWS permissions are required to add or remove EC2 from an EC2 target group? The rest of my family was listening. They go, what are you talking about? Hi, I'm new to AWS management. Oh, we've got somebody in AWS management asking a question, do we? What do they mean in managing? Who knows? I've been tasked with creating a role that grants the ability to add and remove EC2 from specific target groups. So target groups are what you use to define load balancers, and say load balancer, send your request to this group of EC2 instances. However, when looking at the available rights that I can delegate to a policy, I do not see anything related to target groups for any EC2 privilege. The role is going to be assumed by another team. Okay, so he's letting another team decide what instances should be in the target group. Oh, somebody came in. Yes. The commands, load balancers fall outside of EC2, except for classic load balancer, I think. If I look at, let's go for Bodo 3 since I'm used to it. The EC2 commands for the SDK API are just massive, and whenever I load this page, it just takes ages to get in here. So can I create a load balancer? Load balancer. No command to create a load balancer. What I think it is that in classic load balancer, is defined in the EC2 set. Oh, it's not there. Oh no, it is a different thing for Classic as well. They've got this thing called Elastic Load Balancing, which is a separate set of commands. And then you've got Elastic Load Balancing V2, which is the application load balancer. The AWS SDK Go, yeah, the EC2 has too many commands. They've got to break up EC2. Maybe they're going to have EC1, EC3. I don't care. They've got to break up EC2. There's too many commands in the whole thing. So the commands are in Elastic Load Balancing 2 to be able to do things with A or Bs. So they're quite correct here. And they're saying you can create a group with an EC2 full access policy, create a group with an E or B, and a modified target group. That's looking interesting. You grab the Java SDKs, read the Java doc. Yeah, whatever your preferred language is, read the doc. Quite good. So it looks like they really need to grant this modified target group. Sometimes you can find a page. I look for IAM actions. And if you are lucky, it comes up with a page. Antronics. Comes up with a page that lists, here it is, that lists all of the actions relating to a particular service. And here it is, modified target group. Modifies the health checks. That doesn't look right. Register targets. Here we are. Register specific targets. What's the opposite of register targets? Deregister. QRS. Deregister targets. I think we've found our answer here. So, grants the ability by another team. So, the other team would need these permissions. And what's the prefix? Prefix is AWS ELB v2 permissions. It's in the top of that doc. What was the other doc I was just looking at? Oh, elastic load balancing. Ah, that's interesting. So even the V2 is just elastic load balancing. Thank you for that. So it would be that. Oops. Rid up everything here. Targets and that. And always worth a Google search to see if we got it right. Yes. Load balancing, etc. Ooh. Team. Thank you for the assistance in answering that. You have earned another distraction. The other distraction, what have I got here? Ah, yes, this is old news, but I see some questions out there, and so it's often worth mentioning. People launching EC2 instances often want to get the latest AMI, especially in CloudFormation templates. They're saying, you know, launch me a Amazon Linux or a Windows instance. And traditionally, there used to be a large map that people would put in their CloudFormation template. They'd copy it from us, which says if you're in this region, use this AMI. If you're in that region, use this AMI. And it got very, very complex and out of date quickly. So a while back, the parameter store team introduced the capability to query the latest AMI just by calling the parameter store. So here is an example. Describe, you can call with the this will do. SSM get parameters. So you can say, please give me the latest Amazon Linux 2 instance in a particular region. So let's give that a go. If I say, ooh, big bang. I say, give me the latest here, and it is returning a specific AMI number for that region. And if I run the same command for a different region, I can spell, it should return a different AMI number. So up here you'll see it ends with 75, and down here you'll see it ends with FB. And so this is a great way to automatically get the latest AMI in a particular region and put it inside a CloudFormation template. But one person was asking a question, I don't know if I can find it out there, but they had a already deployed CloudFormation stack with an auto scaling group, and whenever the auto scaling group launches a new instance, they wanted to use the latest AMI, but it had been running for a long time. The stack had been running for a long time, so the auto scaling group would not always use the latest instance because this parameter store thing only runs the very beginning of the CloudFormation template. Here's an idea of how you can use it in CloudFormation. So it would only run when the stack was first deployed, and it wouldn't always get the latest ID. So I couldn't quite figure out how to re-trigger this evaluation to get the latest AMI to update their launch configuration on the auto scaling group. If you understood that, please go and do your AWS certification. You understand everything. If you didn't understand it, don't worry too much. But that is something that is worth knowing about. Bye-bye. Oh, we had something like this last week, didn't we? I'm new using Amazon SQS, and I'm supporting some queries in my company. The problem I'm facing is that a few days ago, some messages got stuck in available. As you can see in the picture, I've searched in a lot of places, but didn't found anything about this. Not every message that gets stuck. Ah. Okay, so they're sending messages. Is it a FIFO queue? No, it's a standard queue. They're sending messages. Some messages get stuck. Not all messages. What do you think this might be? It's either it's not processing the messages, or something that's processing the messages is failing and the messages get back on the queue, which was a question we had just recently on the certification quiz show. So the tip there is that you should configure a dead letter queue in SQS. We could even give this a go. I'm going to create a queue called my dead letter queue. And I'm just going to create a queue. Then I'm going to create a new queue to demonstrate how the dead letter queue works, or hope that it works, because I haven't tried it. This is my Q1. And down here, I'm going to say, configure a dead letter queue. I've got to put the AR in. Oh no, I can choose it. Here's my queue. Unselect the queue. Here's my dead letter queue. Create a queue. Doing wrong. Dead letter queue. Enable. Okay, I'll put it in by ARN. Here is the AR. No, ARN is this one. So grabbing the ARN for a queue, configuring a new queue, adding my dead letter queue into it, and I can say, once you've had one receive of message, I'm going to make it very simple, send the message to the dead letter queue. Oh, there it is. That's working. Now it works. Okay, so if I send a message to my queue, hello from John, send the message, and then I go back to my queue and I move things around. There's my dead letter queue, Lambda trigger. How do I send a message? Poll a message. Everything's different. Send and receive. I go back to send and receive. I'm down here now. I receive messages. I can poll for messages, which looks at them, and I can look at this message. Now, theoretically, in simply looking at this message in the console, I have incremented the receive count. And if the receive count goes above the dead letter queue count or equals the dead letter queue count, it should move it to the dead letter queue. So if I receive it a second time, the message is gone. So the message disappeared from the queue. And if I go back to here, aha, perfect timing, Instamac. If I go to the dead letter queue and we have a look in the queue and start polling, yes. So this is in the dead letter queue, and if we look at it, it should say hello from John. So let's recap what I did. Created two queues. My main queue pointed to the other queue as the dead letter queue. I configured the dead letter queue option to say after one receive, send it to the dead letter queue, and it moved to the other queue. And merely looking at the message in the console counts as a receive, which triggered that dead letter queue to move over. So you normally want a much larger number. Why does this exist? Let's say you've got a function that is pulling messages from a queue and something goes wrong. Maybe it was running on a spot instance and the spot instance terminated. It has called the receive message command from the queue. When you call receive message, the message on the queue becomes invisible for a certain period of time. And then if the worker that is processing the message has finished processing it, it calls and says delete message, and the message is gone forever. However, if the worker fails while processing the message and never calls delete message, the message will reappear on the queue after a certain invisibility period. And that will increment the receive count, and the dead letter queue will automatically jump in after that's been done X times and move it to the dead letter queue. So I think that their problem here is that they have a process that is failing process messages. And somebody here is asking, do they get stuck in a common theme? So something's failing, the message reappears, and it's getting stuck in a sort of infinite loop. It's always trying to process the message and it's failing. So let's tell them that. Like something. Delete message. Talk about dead letter queues. SQS dead letter queue. Always nice to link to the documentation. Fantastic. So yes, Instant Mac, if you are studying for SQS, for the AWS exam, that's the main thing you need to know about SQS. The fact that you can store huge quantities of messages in there. When you retrieve a message off the queue, which you can do in batches up to 10 at a time, one message, it turns invisible. If that invisibility period is exceeded, the message reappears on the queue for another worker to grab, and the worker needs to specifically delete the message off the queue for it to disappear forever. And a dead letter queue can be used to move a message off if it's received too many times. The only other thing I would say you need to know is that there is a FIFO, a first in, first out option for the queues. Let's have a look at that. Queues, create a queue, first in, first out queue. And the difference with the first in, first out queue is you are guaranteed to get messages in the order they are sent. And there's a funny thing called a message group ID that keeps groups of messages together, so you process it in order. Is the invisibility period configurable? Yes. So it's here. When you create a queue, you can say what the timeout is, up to 12 hours. But here's an interesting thing, won't be examined. When you retrieve a message from the queue, you can also override that visibility timeout. Invisibility. And so you can say, oh, please keep it invisible for 20 seconds. So you can override the default. FIFO, if I recall, only attempts delivery of a message once, where standard can potentially deliver a message multiple times. Is that right? So it's not so much deliver, it's that it is possible when you go to a SQS queue and you say, give me a message, the same message might be received more than once. And the reason for that is, I'm trying to find a particular image that might be hard. There are lots and lots of servers. Here it is. There are lots and lots of servers in SQS. It's a highly distributed service because you can send thousands of messages a second, store millions of messages in there. It's more than one server. So it's sort of eventually consistent. So if you go to one particular server and say, give me some messages, and another worker at the same time goes to a different server and says, give me a set of messages, both of those workers might retrieve the same message. It's rare, but anything that happens millions of times happens. And so you might receive the same message more than once. For the same reason, if you go there and say, give me messages, it might only give you, let's say there are 2 messages in the system, it might only give you 1 because the messages are distributed across many different servers. FIFO is a bit different. It will avoid that situation where it gives you the same message more than once, but there is a slower throughput on a FIFO queue. So you can only do something like 2,000 transactions a second. SQS, AWS limitations. It is 3,000. FIFO is 3,000 messages per second. To guarantee that, because they have to check that nobody else has done that duplication. If you need faster than that, then use a standard queue. FIFO is more expensive, yeah, because it's got to do more of that processing. And the other hard concept to get in FIFO is this concept of a message group ID. The best I can explain it is, imagine you've got a lot of buses sending GPS coordinates and you want to draw the bus on a map. The message group ID might identify which bus is sending the message. And you've got lots of messages in the queue, you've got lots of workers pulling from the queue. You want to process each bus in the correct order. So you say it went from here to there, but you're happy to get this bus and then that bus and then that bus in any order. What the message group ID will guarantee is that when you retrieve messages for a particular bus, it will give you the first one. Only once you finish processing the first message for that bus will it give you the next message for that bus. So it guarantees order within that message group ID. Too detailed to be on an exam, but it will get you if you are programming up FIFO queues. I see a lot of people who get confused over that and have trouble pulling it. Yeah, it's an interesting feature. When you really think about it, how do you guarantee first in, first out when you've got invisibility? So what if a worker grabs a message, fails, and the message gets put back on the queue due to invisibility? It'll go out of order. So to avoid that out of order from happening, it won't give you another message for the same message group ID until that has been specifically deleted, and then it will give you the next one in line. So it avoids things becoming out of order. to delete my queues now that I'm finished with them. I don't think there's any charge for having SQS queues, but I'd like to clean up. You are charged per SQS. You're charged per API call, which is a weird one of doing it. And you're charged 40 cents per million requests, but it's 3 requests per message because you're sending a message, retrieving a message, and deleting the message. So unless you do it in batches, you could be up for 3 API calls per message, which is a tiny, tiny fraction of a cent. So really low cost service. Theoretically, the first service that AWS introduced. I think we are done with that one. Lambda cross-account keys and usage. And somebody's given an answer. I have a use case to use AWS Lambda to copy files objects from one S3 bucket to another. In this use case, the source S3 bucket is in a separate account, say account 1, where the provider has only given us an access key and secret key. Oh, I hate this. Our Lambda runs in account 2, and the destination bucket can either be in either account 1 or some other account altogether, which can be accessed using IAM role. Oh boy. Usually I used to use the following S3 command to copy between buckets when everything's in the same account. I want to know how this can be modified for the new use case. So they say the source bucket is that and the destination bucket. How can it be modified to fit my use case of access key based connection to source and destination? So the real problem here is you only want to run the copy command using credentials that have permission to both read the source and write to the destination, and then it can be copied, because the S3 copy command is lovely. It doesn't download, upload, it just tells S3 copy amongst yourself. But the one set of credentials need read permission from the source, write permissions to the destination. The easiest way to do that is to add a bucket policy on the source or the destination that allows the set of credentials from account 1 to use the bucket in account 2 or vice versa. But they've been given an access key and secret key from account 1. So they effectively would need a bucket policy in account 2 that says those credentials are allowed to write to the target bucket. It's actually much better if they gave a bucket policy, grant access to your existing credentials rather than giving you a new set of credentials. So somebody, who's this, Exilian, is saying it's easiest to provide credentials to S3. STS, yeah, security token service. But that doesn't give any additional things. So what they're saying here is you can create 2 session keys, but copy will not work with 2 different. Oh, it will. It will. I think there is something in the copy command. Copy object. Using roles. So the problem is their access key, secret key is in the source account, and they want to copy to their own account or to some other thing. So basically, wherever they're copying to, they would need a bucket policy. But they can't. I assume they can't create a role in the other account there. Now, I remember something being in here. See if I can find it. Something about credentials. Dang. Photo 3, copy object, other credentials. I remember seeing something about being able to provide an extra set of credentials in the copy command. I'll be darned if I can find it. This, I was about to say, this is a very nicely formatted answer, and it was me from a year and a half ago. can't see anything that mentions the extra credential, but I really remember something about that. Expected. Oh, this is a new thing that was put in. Expected bucket owner and expected source owner. I saw some mention about this. There's new capabilities in S3 where when you copy to and from things, you can specifically say, I think the owner of the bucket is X, and this can prevent you accidentally copying data to or from someone else's bucket. So you can literally lock it down to just your account. Would be quite good. But I can't. Oh, here it is. No. Copy source. Yes. Copy source. No, that's the encryption. Customer key. Recopy, specify. Really wish I could find where that is. Maybe I'm dreaming. Is it in the CLI documentation? Nope. I'm going to do a hunt for that later on, so I'm going to keep that one aside. See if I can find that, because that would be the perfect answer. Yeah, so what they're saying here is you'll have to download the object and upload the object, but it would work really well if you can specify a second set of credentials. It's like source credentials or something like that. Oh well. I'll see if I can find that. How are we going here? Going for about an hour. I like Redshift. Let's try this one. I have a Lambda function that connects to Redshift using psychopg2, which is a library to connect to Postgres. Redshift is based on Postgres, so that works nicely. If I have the following expression through EventBridge. EventBridge is effectively CloudWatch events. So they've got the cron schedule going there. Beware, it runs in UTC. So every 5 minutes they're doing it. But if I use the expression, it raises an error. Oh, cron debugging. Oh, we love you. Timed out. Redshift is configured so the cron expression is within that period. Oh, I see. Their Redshift cluster is only running for certain hours. The following code snippet where I connect to Redshift. Cron expressions are in UTC. Ah, I told you. Are you sure that matches the time the Redshift is running? Could be, since I'm running in North Virginia, I tried to run at 7, 8, 9, 10. It's not really a problem of the cron expression. The problem is the Redshift server is off, because here it's saying connection timed out to the server. So if it's only happening occasionally, that would definitely be it. Turning Redshift off. To turn Redshift off, can you do that? You could terminate the cluster and rebuild it later. But, oh, Cloud Guru, this is 2 years ago, that's too old. I don't think you can start and stop. A Redshift cluster, so there must be, oh, I take it back. Earlier this year, we launched pause and resume. You can pause and resume a cluster to suspend on-demand billing. They still appear. What are you charged for? How does that work? You're only charged for the cluster's storage. Okay. So that could work very nicely if you pause and things. Because Redshift can be expensive, especially if you're not using it. There we are, I've learned something. Programmatic access to resources. My Java service will run on my computers. Let's say I have 100 computers that will send data to S3. I use Java SDK. If I'm right, for doing it, I'll need an access key and secret key on my computers. Are they EC2? I don't know. I read a lot of documentation about best practices for resources, programmatic access, can't understand it, rotating keys, and temporary credentials. Can someone advise me the best way to secure programming access AWS resources? What do I need with my access key and secret key? The computers are in different networks. The Java app sends and receives. New computers can be added anytime. So what would be a good security technique here? Since they're not on EC2, he's got to store credentials either on the machine. Use IntelliJ as the editor install toolkit to set up credentials to the account you're working against. Yeah, so he's effectively got to store. Ruger effectively has to store the credentials on each of those computers, either in a config file or they would need to retrieve credentials from, well, you can't retrieve from parameter store unless you have credentials. So basically, he needs a way to either store or give the credentials to each of those 1,000 computers. Or the 1,000 computers could authenticate themselves against an Active Directory type thing and then receive temporary credentials and then do it. Oh, guess your computers are in your private network. Yeah. Oh, how to develop? Yeah, he wants 1,000 computers to talk to S3. So what's another option? Another option. Yeah, so then, well, STS. So if we have a look at STS, STS has quite a few options. So let's see. They can't assume a role without a role. They could use federation. So if they're connected to Active Directory, they could use get federation, and that will authenticate them against some other service and then give them some credentials. Session token needs credentials. SAML type thing. So I like the federation idea. So it returns a set of temporary credentials for a federated user. So what it needs is a central machine to which they authenticate. The central machine then says, hey, they are authenticated to me. I will then call STS generate a set of credentials and give it to them, and those credentials run for a maximum of 36 hours. Link to that. Here generates temporary. Oh, commercial SSH management product. Metadata mock to simulate. Oh, that's really interesting. I've never seen that. So how does this work? I love learning these things. A tool to simulate EC2 metadata for local testing. The question is, again, how do you put the credentials in this type of service? Emulate spot instance interruptions. This is fantastic. I'm going to in this instance meta. I use Pinboard as my social bookmarking service, pinboard.in, and it's great. I can just pin things to my service and I can find them again much later. You can also, it supports the new V2. Yeah, the one thing I just don't see how this would get the credentials in the first place. No, but thanks for pointing it out. That's really interesting. Good enough. So yeah, that was fun. One thing I don't like here though, the heading. Every question in Stack Overflow must have a unique title. So what this person is effectively saying is their question is the only question that can ever exist, called AWS Resources Programmatic Access, which is not really how to grant AWS non-EC2 computers and rotate key. That will make it easier for people to find in future. Fantastic. Centrify. Leader in zero trust and privileged access. This would be great for teenage children, you know, zero trust in teenage children. I don't know what they do, but apparently they're well respected. Privileged access management. Oh, any React people? I'm trying to get the size of my folders in S3 from React Native. Couldn't find a way to do it. The problem, of course, is folders. Stefan, you're watching. Are you? That's you, Mr. Bob. You're answering questions while you're watching my show. Do we allow this? I fully appreciate it. Good work, Mr. Bob. I have actually met Mr. Bob, otherwise known as Stefan, in Seattle. And Seattle. Ooh, do I have a picture on here? Nope. You're lucky, otherwise I'd be showing the picture. We met each other in front of the Seattle Spheres. Do you know the Seattle Spheres? Otherwise known as Jess Balls. The Seattle Spheres are an amazing creation in downtown Seattle. next to the large Amazon Day 1 building. And there's a whole ecosystem inside of the spheres. That was when it was being created. And there's hundreds, thousands of trees. There's tropical fish. There's nice little paths where people can go for walks and have business meetings. It's got full of Wi-Fi, and there's a cafe. And the only thing is it's rather humid. All throughout the whole year, it's kept rather humid, which is great in winter. A good place to go. In summer, it's a bit annoying. And most amazing thing. So the idea is that it's a calming place where Amazon staff can go and appreciate nature while still doing work on their laptops. I think it's open to the public once a month or something. You can get tours going through there. Or if you have a friend who works for Amazon, if you're in Seattle, they can take you through and give you a bit of a show. I don't get to Seattle enough anymore, but it'd be fun to have a team meeting or something inside the spheres. Yeah, it's huge. It's sort of half a city block, multiple levels, bathroom facilities and function rooms and kitchens, and I think this is a picture. Yes, here's a picture, a bit hard to see, where they brought in a make it bigger. There's a huge tree, ruby, that was dropped inside. It is a 55-foot, 36,000-pound rusty fig tree. And come on, take a big picture for me. Anyway, so it was dropped in the top of the sphere. So it was specially designed to open up the top to allow this tree to come in. And it occupies the full height there. And next door is the Day 1 building, where you can look out and have a look. Also, there is the Doppler building, I think, next door, which has a dog park on level 17. Image on... It's in Doppler. Yes, this is the level 17 dog park, where Amazon allows you to bring your dogs to work as long as they obey certain rules about not peeing too much on the carpet and all that. And you can take them out to this artificial dog park on level 17 where they can see the skyline. And also next to the Amazon spheres, there is another dog park. Oh, here's a picture of the dog park out there. So Amazon is a different company, you know. What do you want? There's another office I went to where you could play with a crane that comes from the fulfillment center that's normally used to pull boxes and things off shelves. Another one that has a whole historical display of Kindles. There is also the banana stand. There is a banana, they call them banistas, who staff this banana stand every day next to the Amazon headquarters in Seattle. And you can come along and grab some bananas, and it's open to the whole public. Anyone can come along. So you see a lot of homeless people in Seattle happily eating bananas. And I have no idea what the meaning is of having a banana stand, but Amazon's a different place. Must be supporting a lot of the banana growers in America. And there's actually an audio tour you can get on Audible. You may know Audible, the audio book company, which is owned by Amazon, and there's a free audio book tour you can get on Amazon, on Audible Amazon HQ tour. So if you ever visit Seattle, you can get this free audio book, and it's got the banana picture. And as you walk around Seattle, it describes all the different buildings and explains a bit of the history. There's one building that has a skeleton in the window. Why has it got a skeleton? It was the first item ordered off Amazon auctions. That was an attempt to compete against eBay. They shut down auctions in the end, but we like to celebrate success. So there's the skeleton hanging in the building. In another building, I actually saw a display of things that were tried and failed. And so they gave awards to people for trying things that failed. So really, really interesting. If you're ever in Seattle, find someone who works at Amazon and ask them to show you around the buildings. They're quite amazing. One last thing I'll show you is Orange Room. There'll be a picture here. Yes, here it is. This is a building in the recent building called reInvent, and it is a totally orange room with orange wallboards, mirrors, chairs, and all that, and you can sit there and pose for a picture. And I went there with Mr. Bob, and we got our picture taken. So there you are. That's Amazon for you. They don't ship the room. They ship the bananas. Ah, dear. Okay, we're talking about S3 folder sizes. So Mr. Bob said, S3 does not have folders in the traditional sense, correct? So getting folder sizes is a bit hard. You can, however, use the prefix, which is totally correct. And S3 also reports the entire bucket size to CloudWatch once a day, but it doesn't do subfolders. Does it? There is the ability to create custom metrics on S3. Not too sure if you can. S3 custom metric CloudWatch folder. Oh no, that's request metrics. You can configure custom request metrics, which I think work on the folders. Yeah, but there's not size metrics. In S3, if you go to CloudWatch, the only metrics that we provide are storage metrics, and you get the number of bytes and the number of objects, and the number of bytes is broken down by the storage type. So if you have things in standard, or here I've got standard infrequent access or deep archive, it will tell you the total size of the objects in the bucket of each storage type. Yeah, plus there's these request metrics if you've got them turned on. Apparently I had them turned on at some stage. So you can ask for request metrics. What does that give you? The number of requests, get requests, put requests, uploaded, downloaded, which is different to object level tracking, which you can do in S3. You can activate, what's it called? Properties, object level logging. So object level logging will use CloudTrail to track access, which is different to server access logging. And I'm confused by this. I think server access logging is when people do a sort of anonymous request via HTTP and say, please give me the content. Whereas object level logging, I suspect, is when there are API calls to like get object, put object, not via the HTTP interface. So I mentioned before that S3 is a simple service, but by golly, they're adding more and more features there all the time. Can you imagine the amount of data that must be stored in S3? I've also heard that Outposts, Outposts, our service that allows you to get AWS services delivered to your own data center and installed, and they can support Amazon EBS, the storage service, which has lots of disks, which makes a very heavy rack. There are certain rules about, is the floor strong enough to take an Outposts rack? Because the rack can be so heavy it can break the floor. So here is an Outposts rack that you can get delivered to your own data center if you want to run the services locally, very, very low latency. You get one delivered to your house just for a bit of fun, do let me know. Except you need a huge power source and lots of air conditioning. He answered that. So, good. Oh, can you use CLI with credentials file, but not with environment variables? I use my CLI commands. Has anyone answered this? Oh, some people have answered this, but I found it interesting. I usually use my CLI commands after setting a profile with the environment variable AWS profile. So you can tell it which profile to default to in the credentials file. What I'm currently trying to do is access via environment variables. To do so, I'm setting these variables in my bash profile. The environment variables are set up correct, yet when I access AWS resources, I get the message, the access key you provided does not exist, which is weird to me. They're exactly the same. And they're listing their various settings. In other words, the environment variables are set correct. The CLI acknowledges them. Their values are the same when they're being set by the credentials file, but they don't work that way. Maybe it's due to the session token. That's interesting. The one reason I want to show this is this answer, and I wasn't aware of this. So normally there is a credentials provider chain. So if I go Boto3 credentials chain, whenever using a SDK, it looks for credentials in a certain order. And chain. Oh, it's not Boto, yeah, chain, provider chain. I want, it must include chain. I don't want it. There, yes, here it is. So in every language is different, but if you're using Boto3, which the CLI uses, so if you're using the CLI, Boto3 applies, it first of all looks for credentials mentioned specifically when the function is called. Otherwise, the session object you use, otherwise the environment variables, otherwise your credentials file, otherwise assumed roles, etc. So this is saying that the environment variables will be used before the credentials in a file. So that should satisfy this person. But what this KK is saying is, in the credentials file, you can add a line that says credential source equals environment, and that will look in the environment variables. And I was never aware of that before, that you can tell the profile to go back and use the credentials, the environment credentials. Have any of you ever seen that before? I've never seen that one. Let's see if I can find that. Credential source. It can be the metadata, ECS container, or the environment variable. That's interesting. And the source profile are mutually exclusive. Oh, okay. So you either tell it, look in the credentials file with a certain source profile, or you can tell it to look somewhere else. That was a little bit interesting for me to learn. Okay, let's find something else to do before we finish up. Oh, we've looked at the streaming costs. Recognition is always fun. And I've done a little bit with recognition. I'm cropping teeth from a face based on the API. My code is working, but it's cropping teeth like this. So they want to be able to crop a picture and just show the mouth. So the whole picture is looking like this. And they just want to get the mouth out of here. And the interesting thing about recognition, when you run Amazon recognition against a picture, it comes back and says, oh, I found a face. And these coordinates are in proportions of the picture width. So what it's saying is, I've found a face which starts 46% in. Oh no, the width is 46% of the picture. The height is 77% of the picture. It starts 28% in and from the top. So it's very close to the top, and it occupies about half the width. So if we look at the picture, yeah, face occupies about half the width and 77% of the height. So the numbers are in a fraction of the total page. And it can tell you, are they smiling? Are they wearing sunglasses? What the gender is, 99% male. Do they have a beard, etc.? Is their mouth open? Are they confused? They're happy. Anyway, there are some landmarks in here that tells it where to find the eyes, where to find the nose, and things like that. And what this person is looking for is mouth coordinates. The mouth up and down, I think, is the top and bottom of the mouth, though I don't know why there's X and Y coordinates. And there should also be some, oh no, that's it, is it? Mouth up, mouth down, mouth left, mouth right. Okay, so there's sort of 4 coordinates showing where the mouth is. I don't quite understand why they're X, Y's. And unfortunately, their output has always been giving them, looks like they've got the correct top left, but they don't have the right size of their mouth. And I was looking at this earlier, and they're calculating correctly by taking the right of the mouth minus the left of the mouth, multiplied by the image width. They're somehow getting it wrong. And then I noticed they're using image magic, and they pass this additional parameter called true. And I think that is changing the way the whole thing is working. And they haven't come back to me and said what that is. But I just thought this is a really great example of Amazon let's have a play. What is it? Recognition. Always fun to play with these types of services. If you haven't, give it a try in the console. We want to go for face analysis. And let's give it a picture. Upload a picture of somebody in the Apple Genius bar. So it's saying here is a person, it looks like a face, they appear to be male, they're smiling, and you can see it's drawn the coordinates around the face, and it's drawn the dots on their eyes and their mouth. So that's exactly what was coming up before, that you can locate where their eyes and mouth are. Is really great for superimposing things on top of their faces. So recognition is really, really fun to play with. Looks like it's just got the left and right of their mouth. Oh, I wonder if it's sort of turning the mouth into a rectangle. That might explain why it has 4 coordinates. Oh well, they haven't answered me, so I can't help them. One last thing to take us out. What is good out here? I'd love to use the pictures from yesterday's disastrous debate. I've heard about the debate. I don't want to know about the debate. I live in Australia. It's far enough away. I don't talk political. This was fun. For those of you who play with Boto, I want to get a list of EBS volumes in Python. And here's their code. And they're getting some errors. And it looks like what they're doing is they're saying, get me all of my EC2 instances. And for each of the instances, they want to retrieve the disk volumes associated with the instance. And they've got a bit of a code muddle there. And I took this as a good opportunity when I answered it yesterday to compare 2 different ways of using Boto 3. Boto 3 has 2 interfaces. One's called the resource and one's called a client. And the client maps one-to-one to API calls that AWS receives. So you can make a call to describe instances, and let's whack that up a bit. When you get it back, you get a list of reservations that contain instances. For each instance, you can then call describe volumes, passing in the instance ID, and you get back the volumes. And it's pretty verbose doing it with a client method. But the really neat thing is if you use the resource method in S3 in Boto, it's more Pythonic. So you can just come in and say, hey, for every instance and for every volume on that instance, so for each instance in every instance, get me the volumes for that thing and then just print the information. So it's amazing how in just 3 lines of code, you can do what takes considerably more code to do using the client method. So if you enjoy more Pythonic ways of doing it, that's really neat. But I then realized, hey, this person, it's not very efficient because they're calling get instances. And then for every instance, they're having to call get volume to get all of the volume details. And yes, there is an easier solution. And that is you could call, just call describe volumes. Let's go to this one first. You can call describe volumes on all of your volumes and pass a filter that says only where they are attached. Put this one in the chat so you can see it yourself. So only give me back volumes that are attached to an EC2 instance. The problem then is you're not guaranteed that it will come back in order of the instances. So I did another Python-like thing here. If you don't know Python, don't get too confused, but it's basically I'm constructing a list of disk information from the response that comes back. And then I simply say, hey, sort it and print out the information. And the nice thing about that is you've just got the one API call to describe volumes, assuming there's under 1,000 volumes in case it's paged. Or using the more Pythonic method, you can do something similar. Code actually looked worse. So more efficient by just calling describe volumes. I thought it was pretty neat. I love writing these little Python programs because it's a small challenge. I can test it on my own system. I can then publish it. And then I add this little tagline down the bottom, which is worth mentioning. In addition to the license granted under the terms of service of this site, the contents of this post are licensed under MIT 0. So Stack Overflow has various licensing they do so that you can reuse the content in Stack Overflow as long as you credit back to Stack Overflow. So sometimes you'll find other websites that have just copied the exact questions, the exact answers, and they put it out there themselves, but that's allowed as long as you sort of link back to Stack Overflow. But under those licenses, if you take some code and use it in your own program, you've got to credit back the person who wrote the original code, and this can get you into a lot of legal trouble. So the general tip is you should never copy and paste code off Stack Overflow. At Amazon, we're not allowed to do that. We can be inspired by the code we see on Stack Overflow. We can write the code ourselves, but we never copy and paste. And when I post code like that online, I like to add the additional thing saying it's licensed under MIT 0 that basically says you can do whatever you want with it. So you will not be limited by the rules of the license on Stack Overflow. You can take my code and do what you want. So we're being nice and helping people. So there we have it. It's been almost a couple of hours, so I think we might call it quits there. Thank you once again for joining me on AWS on Stack Overflow. I hope you learned a few things there. I've learned a few things today that I always enjoy. And I look forward to seeing you all again. Am I on next week? I think I am. There's a few special events coming up that will take away this time slot from our channel, but I think I'll be on again next week. So thank you very much for joining me, and I look forward to seeing you all on Stack Overflow. I also invite you to join our Stack Overflow room, where we have a bit of a discussion about AWS questions and things on there. So if you ever want to say hi, that's a place you can say hi to me and the other question askers. So thanks very much. See you online. Bye-bye.